Kunal and Partho.
Good evening.
Welcome to the next podcast on Mahavakyas of Gita. So, Partho, last time we had discussed the Mahavakya where Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that become my minded, become my lover, surrender to me, bow to me, and have me as thy. So, can we move on to the next Mahavakya that you find as the next thread we should cover? Yes, in our Mahavakyas of Gita, please.
So, as I had mentioned earlier, which we are not following any sequence,
Yes.
we'll jump back a bit. And for the next Mahavakya, we'll take up from chapter 2. And why I'm taking it up as a Mahavakya is because this again sets the tone for the practice, the yoga of the Gita. So I'll read out the sloka first. So this is the 71st sloka from the second adhyaya. Vihai kamanya sarvan pumans charati nispriha nirmamo nirahankara sa shantim digachati. Vihai kamanya sarvan pumans charati nispriha. A person who gives up all desires, non-material desires, psychological desires born of the senses. So the word viha is giving up. Kama anya is from calm, desire. Kamanya, who gives up desires of all kinds and lives in a state of nispriha. Nispriha is without spriha, without any kind of attachment. So a person who gives up all desires for the material life, for sense, so the objects of the senses, lives in a state of desirelessness, non-attachment, desirelessness. Nirmamo nirahankara, nirmamo, the sense of me and mine is completely absent in such a person. One who has gone beyond the sense of this is me and this is mine. That's completely gone. And nir-ahankara, without any ahankar, without any ego. So such a person, sa shantim digachati, such a person comes to or attains peace of the Atma, the everlasting peace, the eternal peace, the peace of Brahma. So it's a fundamental sloka again, because it sets the tone for the whole of the yoga. So the question, how does one live the Gita in one's day-to-day existence? What kind of discipline one should be following? What is the sadhana involved? So what we touched last time, manmana bhava madhubhakto madhyaji mama namaskuru, that again is the state of being that one has to have. Being in Sri Krishna's conscious all the time, Sri Krishna's consciousness all the time. No, manmana bhava madhubhakto is to be living in Sri Krishna's consciousness all the time, and to be surrendered to Sri Krishna, to be surrendered in adoration to Sri Krishna. Now this takes us further into the practice, the discipline, the psychological or the psycho-spiritual conditions needed for this yoga. So once again, I'll go through the sloka and then we can talk about it. Vihai kamanya sarvan pumans charati nispriha nirmamo nirahankara sa shantim digachati. One who has given up all material, psychological desires for sense gratification, who has become desireless, nispriya, desireless, without attachment, who has given up the sense of me and mine, and who has gone beyond the ego, beyond the I. So not only was given of the sense of me and my, but was given of the sense of the I itself. As such a person will attain to the supreme peace. So that's the other key to living the Gita.
And all this is while being part of the Karma Yoga, by being part of the world,
While living in the world.
not just giving up everything and or not going for
Because then there's no context. If you're living alone in the Himalayas somewhere in the forest, then where's the occasion of sense gratification, for instance? You may think you've given up all that, but all that would probably still be there in you, in its subtle seed form, sanskars. But living in the world, in the field of action, uh, every event, every experience, every interaction will, if it's there in you, will bring it to the front, and it will give you the opportunity to work on it and to transcend it, to conquer it within yourself, to go beyond it. Yes.
well being in the world, surrendering to Sri Krishna, becoming one with Sri Krishna or becoming part of his consciousness, um, and then giving up the desires and the ego. Does this process go through as an intellectual, outwardly practice, moving towards inwardly eventually?
Yeah, I mean, outwardly, one has to first understand what it means. I mean, the sloka that we just read now, like, how does one become nispriya? How does one go beyond this whole mamata thing, this me and mine? So the key is in the word that follows, nir ahankara. The not is in the ahankar. So where does sense of me and mine come from? All mamata comes from ahankar. So the core, the base is the ahankar. And from there arises me and mine, and from there arises desires and attachments, spriha of all kinds. So to become nispriha, to become nirmam, one has to first become nirahankar. So what one has to address, one has to understand to begin with. One has to first understand what this ahankar is, what are the ramifications of the ahankar is. And one has to become very familiar with one's own ahankar, with the movements of one's own ego. So one can keep saying that, I don't want to be egoistic, but does one really know how the ego works, functions, expresses itself through oneself? So if we want to live the Gita in the world, in the field of action, we have to start with very detailed uh, investigation into the self. First, the self that we are not, the ahankar, the outer self, the one that we are identified with as our personality. And then from there, we have to move inward to begin to understand the self that we truly are. So it's from the outside to the inside. So if we are not very familiar with the way our own ego works, with the multiple shades of the ego in us, then we don't have much of a chance to go beyond it. So, a detailed self-investigation, even self-analysis, and very clear understanding of not just the ego in its abstract sense, but ego in a very practical, very real, practical, psychological, material sense. That understanding has to come.
And I think keeping that understanding of ego as objective as one can, trying to take out all the subjectivity or the mind's tricks. I mean, as an example, I we come across people who would say that uh, I've become spiritual, I've given up my ego, I'm not egoistic, but I'm not egoistic is an ego in itself,
Yes, of course.
right? Just the ego of knowing this shloka, becoming aware of this shloka, intellectually understanding it is an ego where a lot of people get stuck, even those who
No, I mean, intellectually understanding it is one thing, but
then be proud of that I know this and I can
yeah,
repeat
but
it.
yeah, assuming that one has achieved this.
Yes,
That's what you're talking about.
yes, correct. Correct. And then mind plays tricks that look, I've understood, I don't have the ego now. I don't care much, but then still I get bothered by things. So clearly, ego is there. Somewhere it's there.
So that's why I'm saying one has to be very familiar with the way the ego works in you. There are hundreds of ways the ego can work in you,
Yeah.
and the more you look at the ego, the subtler it gets.
Yes.
And if you're on the path, you'll soon realize that it's relatively easier to deal with the grosser forms of the ego. But to deal with the subtler forms of the ego is very difficult, because most of the time we don't even know it's there. And certain forms of ego means, you may have attitude inside you of which you may not even be aware of. No, and it expresses itself through your judgments, your perception, your actions. A very subtle sense of superiority, for instance. Very few people are aware of, and one ends up making all kinds of judgments about others, and you don't even know that that's the ego.
Yeah. The knowledge, awareness, wisdom is something as part of Vedanta is one of the last things to give up, which is the hardest thing. Because being aware of what you have learned over or accumulated over one lifetime or many, A, it's hard to be aware of, and B, it's one of the hardest to give up, which is a more subtle form. And the gross would be, uh, just I have this asset, I have this money, I have this job, I have this.
Yeah, so that's mamata. That's when Krishna says nirmamo, it's like without this whole thought and sense that this is my work and this is my knowledge and this is what I have acquired and this is what I possess. All this is, I, me, mine. So nirmamo, nirahankara is actually referring to that I, me, mine complex. And if you look at it, I mean, all our problems are in one way or the other related to I, me, mine. You take away the I, me, mine complex and
There's no problem.
yeah, then where's the problem?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Already you're at peace. So
Let's say I desire to get into this state of having no desire. How does that, is it truly a desire? If it's truly coming from inside, is it more of an
desire for the nispriya state.
desire for desirelessness of sorts? Or is it more an
I
aspiration?
understand what you're saying. Yeah, except that we'd call it aspiration. But then again, if it's truly, I have no problem with the word desire to women.
Yeah.
I can say that I have a desire to be free of desire. So it's like many waves, and I quell these many waves by one single wave, and then I quell that one single wave and it's calm. So in Vedanta, we do say that the final desire that has to go is the desire to be without desire. So at least first, let's be without desire. Then maybe that's what you'll be left with. At the end of the day, you'll just have that one final desire to be desireless. And then once your desires are gone, then that desire too will go with it. Well, I mean, desire to attain self-realization, the desire to realize God, these are desires too. We can use the word aspiration for it, but okay. I mean,
It's still same. It's still same.
yeah, subtle, but the heart of it is the same thing. And our higher desire is just an aspiration, or an aspiration is a higher desire. The desire to do good to the world is also a desire, but a nobler one. So the Vedantic state is to be completely desireless, nishkam, nishpriya. So that niskam, nispriya state is, of course, a liberated state. If desire itself is used to carry you there, then why not? It's like, the rocket that takes off into space. It has those turbochargers that
Yes. So just until it reaches escape velocity, and then once you came to gravity, and then it drops. Yes. So that is, yeah, sure. I think for all practical purposes, anybody who reaches after a level of understanding maturity in life, uh, I really wonder how easy it is for people to give up desires in their day-to-day lives when the whole world runs on the system runs on the capitalism. As an example, is all creating desires in you and making sure that you don't feel complete. You would be complete if you would buy this product, or if you would get this service, or if you would do this, or if you would have bit more money, or bit more house, or more, right? That's how the world works.
Yes. So
Unfortunately,
it's not easy.
it's the hardest thing. I mean,
It is just not easy.
yeah.
You know?
There's a saying by one of the Hollywood actors, Jim Carrey. He goes that, I wish everyone becomes rich and famous to realize and understand that that's not what life is about, you know. And I wonder, can one reach there before attaining that some level of
Like with that, you need to make a lot of money to say that
money doesn't matter?
you don't have to make money.
Money doesn't matter.
Yeah. You need to make a lot of money to say money doesn't matter. You need to be very famous to say fame doesn't matter. But I feel what is needed is maturity as a human being. Very difficult to give up desires, to become nispriya, unless one has matured as a human being. What happens when you're a child? You have so many little desires. And you have so many little games and toys and all kinds of distractions. And they're fine for you as a kid. But as you grow, you also very naturally outgrow a lot of those things, don't you? No? As you grow, you outgrow. And then probably you look back on your toys and your games and you say, oh, well, probably have some memory that at one time I used to be attached to them and they were so very important for me. But because you've grown up and therefore you've outgrown all that, you've become more mature. It's not that you've fought your desire for these things and you've struggled. You've simply outgrown them because that's the natural process of growth. So spiritually too, if we are just growing naturally, if our attention is not all the time in the outside world, and what you just said, the desire complex, if we give at least some attention to our own selves, to the consciousness that is growing in us, and if at some level, in some way, that's important for us to grow as a human being, and not just to keep having all the time, then growth happens very naturally. You're maturing as a human being. And with maturity, you outgrow a lot of things. And one day you find that you've outgrown desire. Not by struggling against desires, not by doing some rigorous tapasya, but simply by becoming more than what you were at one point. Consciousness expands. Isn't that what happens naturally when a human being is growing? A child's consciousness and an adult's consciousness is that much wider, more expanded. So spiritually also, when your consciousness expands, all these things just drop off. And in a very natural way, you become what the Gita is talking about. You nispriha, nirmam, nirahankar. You outgrow ahankar. I mean, there comes a time in your inner growth when this whole ego thing, ahankar, I, me, mine, this whole thing becomes childish. it becomes so childish that there's not even any question about struggling against them or doing some serious yoga about them. I mean, you just see things as they are and say, what childishness? There's infinitely more important things in life to know, to understand, to possess, because your consciousness is growing all the time. So to live the Gita in this world, you have to be growing in consciousness all the time. That's the key. That's what I believe.
And I think, if I may ask or comment that, is the suggestion for anybody still stuck in the, for the lack of a better word, the rat race of the world, or the just still I me, mine kind of outwardly life? Is a suggestion for them to go fulfill the desires until you outgrow them? Because it's hard. I mean, it's otherwise harder to just intellectually try to give up. You can't. Most can't. I mean, maybe reach a point where you feel, you may hopefully outgrow, because it comes. You are also driven by the gunas of prakriti. There,
Yes.
so maybe
So yeah, gunas of prakriti. And I think one of the Mahavakyas we will soon be taking up is something about the prakriti itself. Like every human being is driven by his or her nature.
yes, let the drive happen. Yeah.
So it's like, if you see from my perspective, it's like you go to a bunch of kids playing football, and you tell them, listen, why just go on playing football? More interesting things to do. For instance, understanding the nature of the universe. So why don't you do that? Would you do that with a bunch of kids? I wouldn't. Well, I let them play. I mean, they're still enjoying football. Let them play football. I mean, what's the problem? So again, this is a very subtle kind of ahankar many of us have. That, no, they should outgrow, and they should grow. Uh, why? Says who? When the time comes, when they are ripe enough in their consciousness, they will outgrow. So why not let it happen? Unless they really want to, then it's a different thing altogether. When a person really wants to grow inwardly, nothing in the universe can stop him or her from growing. She or he will find a way to grow and to outgrow. But till then, let's just let things be. And so your question was to be done about those of us who are still in that I, me, mine thing. Well, it's all right, let's go on. I mean, and just hope and pray that you realize it sooner than later.
One last question on this. So once one has no ego, assuming one in this life or another life gets to this point where one has no ego left, uh, virtually no desires left, and uh, what keeps that one person going? Is it completely just a instrumentality of the divine, that the divine does through you, whatever happens, and you are in virtually infinite bliss of sorts and working through? Or
So yes, that's an interesting question. So most people think negatively about things. That
then what's left?
the way of negation.
Yeah.
All this is gone, then
What's left? Yeah.
And so many people have asked me that, the Gita says to work without caring about outcome. So then why work? Legitimate question, actually. But then the thing is, it's not all negation. Things get replaced. I mean, let's go back to the analogy I just gave.
Football, yeah.
Why will this kid give up playing football? Only when he gets the rasa of, let's say, physics. I'm just example. So of fathoming the cosmos, understanding how the universe works. And you get the rest of that. You start getting involved with that. Football will drop off. This is just analogy. I'm not saying that physicists cannot play football. But as an analogy, I mean, that'll drop off. No. Yeah. So why is it dropping? It's not that you've given up football in this instance. Football has dropped from you. You've not given up football. Football has dropped from you because you've found something infinitely more fulfilling, exciting, interesting, creative while playing with the ball on the field. Now you're trying to unravel the secrets of the universe.
Sure. And I think the challenge for many people, and especially on the journey, remains that they are for a long time playing football and trying to do physics as well. For a while, there's an overlap.
I don't think that happens because, I mean, then let's leave the analogy behind. So it's like if you're still in the I, me, mind complex, uh, it more or less obviously means that you haven't touched anything beyond it. Because if you have, even for a few moments, if you've touched that which is beyond the I, me, mind complex, then it's very difficult to fall back into the I, me, mind complex. Because that is so much richer, so much more fulfilling, so much more delightful than struggling at the I, me, mind level that, you don't come back to it.
Sure.
So for this to happen, we have to touch something higher than what you are. You have to touch something deeper than what you are. And until then, it's a struggle. And I don't even know why people are struggling. Because if you want, I always feel that if you want to play football, you please play football and enjoy the end game. At least enjoy it.
Yes.
Don't be in this. Lots of people are conflicted. I want to do this, but I'm doing this. But these are all externally imposed upon you. Somebody's told you, you should be doing that. But why should you be doing that if it hasn't come from your own heart?
Exactly. So I think the conflict starts because we get influenced from outside while it's not being harmonized from inside.
Yes.
That's where the conflict remains, right? Because if it comes from inside, it's natural, it'll just happen.
Yes.
Right?
And also,
And
what you're doing, you're not doing completely.
yeah,
So there's no place for conflict. If you're, to give you the same analogy again, if you enjoy playing football, then play football completely. Then don't think, your universe is better to you and become the best football player in the world. That itself is yoga. Anyway, when you bring that kind of focus and concentration and devotion to what you're doing, that becomes your yoga. Yoga, karmasu kaushalam.
that's beautiful, Partho. I look forward to our next podcast on Mahavakyas, but this was great and I hope our audience also likes it. Thank you.